Run backpack, hydration vest, hydration pack, rucksack. It's all referring to the same thing, a method of carrying your hydration in your kit whilst running. And if you're looking to run longer distances, you're going to need to invest in one. The good news, there are a huge amount of options available. However, it can make it a little bit tricky when you're trying to find the one. Now, I've actually been looking for a hydration vest for quite a while now, and I thought it's a good idea to share what I've learned with you so you know what to look for when you're shopping for yours. Personally, I've been struggling with that balance between comfort, budget, and importantly, usability. Now, there are, of course, lots of other aspects that you need to consider, and these will vary depending on your specific requirements. Let's say you walked into a run shop and said you wanted some help finding a running vest. Well, they would ask you some questions like these. How far do you intend to run? How much would you usually drink over that period of time? Are you happy having a pack on your shoulders, or do you prefer a waist pack? I mean, that's only going to be applicable for the shorter distances. Are you running trail or road? Do you or might you want to use poles? Do you prefer a bladder, or would you rather have bottles that sit on the front of your pack? And what do you like to carry on your long run or in events? And what is your budget? We've covered quite a lot there, but it's worth having a rough idea of your answer to those questions before you start actually looking for a pack physically. And once we've got that information, we can start to dial in how to use it to make sure we find the right pack for you. Well, duration of your run and your future runs is a good starting point. How far are you looking at running? It can be a tough one if you're new to longer distance runs, as it's quite common for you to get the bug. But you might start off with a trail half marathon, and in a year or so's time, you're signed up for that 100k ultra. With that in mind, you might want to consider getting a pack that could accommodate kit and hydration for those potential distances. Even if they seem way off now, you don't want to be having to buy another pack. The climate that you'll be doing a lot of your long runs in will also play a factor. If it is somewhere extremely hot, then you'll need more room to carry fluids. The same goes if you're a heavy sweater. Obviously, for some training runs and most events, there will be options to refill. If you're not planning on running for any longer than 2 to 3 hours, you could consider opting for a waist pack that can carry adequate hydration and some nutrition. And you'll notice that people running shorter distances and races as well will opt for these when they prefer to keep their shoulders nice and free. There are limitations though. Yes, there's a huge selection out there, but realistically, you're not going to be able to carry much more than a 500ml water bottle, or potentially 2 smaller ones, but it does start to get a little bit uncomfortable if you're trying to carry more than that. I personally love using my waist belt, and I've got a slim 300ml bottle, which I use for runs of 2 to 3 hours, obviously, depending on the heat. At the very light end, if only doing short runs and you're happy to have something in your hand, you can, of course, use a handheld water bottle. Or if you know you're running in an area that has readily available fresh drinking water or taps, you could simply carry a collapsible mug. Also useful for, and in some cases, compulsory for races. Once you've decided how much hydration you need to carry, you can then start to hone in how you're going to carry that. And we are looking at run packs, so that's going to be a minimum of 500 to 1000ml of liquid. And you've kind of got 2 main options here. One being the bladder, which basically is a sort of something like this that sits on your back, and you fill it up, and then it has a straw connecting from your backpack that comes normally over your shoulder, and it usually has quite a nice fastening so that it's not going to flop around, but you can still easily access it when you need to drink. And then the other option is to use a vest that has flasks that sit on the front in the chest area, and you've again got 2 options within this. You've got the hard flask like these, or a soft flask option, and you can potentially just have one pocket full if you're doing a run where you don't need much hydration, and use the other pocket to keep your nutrition or something else useful in it. And the difference between the 2 flasks is quite personal preference, but the hard flasks will keep the tension in the bag whether they're full or not, but they are obviously more bulky. If you don't want to be carrying as much water, you've still got the same amount of bulk. They weigh a little bit more. But on the plus side, if you did take a tumble, they're not going to puncture. If you're doing quite a crazy ultramarathon and you're a long way away from any aid station, you're safer off with these. A soft flask though can mold more to your body, so it might be more comfortable. It won't slosh so much when it's empty, and it does have the advantage of being a little bit lighter. And then finally, depending on the positioning of them, some you can quite often drink from without actually having to take them out of the pouches. That's a little bit easier with the soft flask because you can squeeze it to make sure the water comes up to your mouth. But sometimes with these you can reach down enough and be able to get water in, especially when they're quite full. But it's something you'll probably need to experiment with yourself. You'll have a choice of size for both the bladder and the flask, but there's more capacity in a bladder, typically 1.5 to 2 litres, which is plenty for most long runs. The flasks, however, are far easier and quicker to refill if you're doing a supported run. You can also choose to have one with a fuel or electrolyte mix and then the other one with water, for example. Plus, you can monitor the rate of fluid intake far more easily. I would say, though, it's down to personal preference. I currently opt for the front bottles, but that's just because it's what I'm used to. Plus, I don't take on as much fluid as some people might. Final point on hydration, a lot of these run vests or run packs will have the ability to carry bottles on the front or a bladder on the back, or both. But bear in mind that they don't necessarily always come with this, so you might have to buy the water vessel separately to add to the pack. Hydration is the key area we're addressing and the first point you need to consider when buying a running vest, but note that they are labelled by capacity, and that's not their potential liquid capacity, but their volume for carrying kit. As a general rule, you can fit the basics such as a foil blanket, a spare base layer, waterproof and first aid kit into a 10-litre bag at a squeeze. But if you're planning on doing some more adventurous ultras, be aware that the kit list can be quite extensive and for your own safety. So as a result, you might need a larger bag, say a 20-litre. You might not be doing any running that's too challenging at the moment, but a pack's ability to carry poles is something you might want to consider, and it's an extra feature that a lot of them offer. So it will simply be an addition of a couple of straps in a strategic place, but it could be an investment for the future if you're going to be doing some more potentially adventurous running. And you might just want to note whether you have a preference of carrying your poles vertically or horizontally. Again, it's one I'd recommend getting some advice from in a shop. Or before buying your run pack, make sure you try it on in the shop, because there's certain things like the pockets that you want to actually check how easily accessible they are and if they are the right size for whatever you want to carry. So first of all, work out what you need easy access to, how often you want to be able to get it out, and how secure it needs to be. So beyond hydration, I'm talking now. So for me, it's going to be my snacks, my phone, and actually quite often when we're filming, I want to carry my GoPro. So my phone, I want a really nice secure pocket, but still one that I can actually open and close quite easily while still running. The same goes for food. That doesn't need to be quite so secure, maybe slightly easier to open, but readily available. And then the same for the GoPro. It needs to sit where it's not going to be on any bones. It's going to be comfortable when you're moving. And you might want to just check the back of the bag. The pockets you're not going to be accessing very often, but you still want to make sure that there's certain ones that are separated, so when you do actually pack your stuff strategically, it's easy to keep everything separate and easy to get things out when you need to. The fit is another thing that is personal, and the perfect fit should mean that a fully loaded bag is hardly even noticed. So when you're trying it on, do at least partially fill the bag so it's going to be realistic to its shape, because that changes how tight it is. And once you've got it on, you adjust the straps so that they feel that they are secure, and ideally they should be somewhere in the middle of their length, so you can tighten it more if need be and loosen it more if need be. And it's worth noting that some brands will have unisex, and there will also be options for women's specific fits too. So you want to check that there's enough clearance under the arms and it feels snug, not too tight, around the chest. Once you've chosen the vest for you, it's worth taking a bit of time to make sure you've got it adjusted correctly and the straps tucked in for maximum comfort. Well, getting that tightness correct is critical. Loose might feel nice to start with, but it can cause chafing, and if your bag is quite loaded and you're on a really long run, it can apparently even cause bruising of the rib area. That's something that Mark has actually experienced. Obviously though, it needs to not be too tight, as you still need to be able to move and fully inflate your lungs. Oh, and make sure you consider what you usually wear when you're running on your long runs. For example, is it a jacket or a t-shirt? or a vest. Make sure that you try on your new pack with said garment so you can notice if there's any areas that rub, because it will be different. Personally, when I've done a hot race and been just wearing a vest, I've noticed that my pack has rubbed in different places than it would if I was in a t-shirt. So it's something else to remember. Finally, you need to consider your budget. And I would just say that if you find the right pack, it should last you for years, because they tend to be fairly hard wearing and you're not going to use it on every run. So rather than saving a few pounds here and there and then finding a year down the line you need to get a pack that has more pockets or a bigger capacity, it's worth trying to stretch it now and then having something that will last you for a long time. Well, I think we've covered everything. I mean, who knew there was so much to consider when it came to choosing a run pack? I've learned a lot of these points via some trial and error along the way. So hopefully it means you guys can go to the shop and find the perfect bag first time. If there's anything I've missed out or anything you've learned from this, do let us know in the comments section below. Hopefully you found it useful. Give us a like if so, and hit that globe to get all of our GTN videos.